Have you ever heard of the funny phrase, the dingo ate my baby, or the dingo got my baby?
Maybe the dingo ate your baby. What? The dingo ate your baby.
Well, there is a true story behind that saying, but it is not funny at all. In fact, it is so incredibly disturbing, and it involves a 9-week-old baby who was taken from her family's tent in the middle of the night by a dingo, where she was then killed and eaten. So massive trigger warning for this one, guys. This is a horrific story, but I feel like more people should know about it, so let's talk about it. This is Azaria Chamberlain. She was only 9 weeks old when she was viciously killed by a dingo, and despite no physical evidence and based solely on circumstantial evidence, her mom was charged with her murder. Except her mom didn't do it. It was a real dingo that took her baby. This is Lindy and Michael Chamberlain. They were a happily married couple who had 3 beautiful children, 2 little boys and their 9-week-old baby sister, Azaria. On August 16th, 1980, the Chamberlain family set up a campsite near Ayers Rock in the Northern Territory of Australia. This is a really popular camping and tourist site, so the family thought this would be the perfect spot to set up camp and have some fun together as a new family of 5. The next morning, Michael took their 2 sons to hike a portion of Ayers Rock while Lindy stayed behind with baby Azaria. While she was on her own, Lindy explored a really cool cave with Azaria in her arms, and she felt like this was a really magical time. But on her way out of the cave, Lindy was confronted by a dingo, which is a wild dog. And she later recalled that she felt like this dingo was really staring at baby Azaria. This spooked her because dingoes are known to be aggressive, but ultimately she made it back to the campsite where her husband and 2 sons were waiting for her. That night, the Chamberlain family gathered with some other campers nearby around a campfire not too far away from their tent. As the night went on, multiple aggressive dingoes approached all of the campers, but luckily no one got hurt, at least not yet. Later that night, Lindy put a sleeping Azaria and her bassinet in the family tent. Her 4-year-old son was already asleep inside the tent, so this seemed like an easy, peaceful night. Lindy then rejoined the campers, but not long after, she heard a baby scream and cry. So in a panic, she ran back to the tent, and upon doing so, she saw a dingo slumping out of the tent and into the darkness. When she went in the tent, she found the bassinet completely empty and no sign of Azaria. Luckily, her son was okay in the tent, but he was still sleeping, so he had no idea what was going on. This is when Lindy screamed something out that would later become a huge part of this case. She yelled, quote, oh my god, the dingo's got my baby." End quote. Police were called right away, and one of the first things the lead detective on the case did was shine his flashlight on the floor of the tent. There, on one of the rugs right next to the bassinet, was a puddle of blood. And then in that blood and leading out of the tent were fresh dingo tracks. The dingo tracks led pretty far away from the tent, but disappeared once they got to the road. This led to a widespread search for baby Azaria, which involved the police and over 300 volunteers. They scoured the entire surrounding area, but no trace of Azaria was ever found. She was here one second, soundly sleeping in her bassinet, and the next, she was just gone. What's weird though is that police started doubting Lindy and her story pretty much right off the bat. They felt like she wasn't acting how a stereotypical grieving mother should be acting, which is absurd. Everyone grieves differently for one, and for 2, she was probably in major shock. They also didn't believe that a dingo could carry a 10-pound baby hundreds of yards, so they really felt like Lindy was being sketchy. Fast forward to 1 week later. Azaria has still not been found, but this is when a photographer was out taking photos near Ayers Rock when he discovered some shredded clothes near a boulder. The shredded clothes turned out to be Azaria's shredded diaper and the bloody jumpsuit that she was last wearing when she disappeared. So although Azaria's body wasn't found, this was a pretty grim discovery that she was no longer with us. This is when crazy rumors and details started to spread about Lindy, which painted her in a bad light and made her appear suspicious to the public. Of course, these were all based on nothing and just wildly inappropriate, but this information made her look really bad, even though most of it wasn't factual. A short while into the investigation, police found that the Chamberlain family had hiked in the area where Azaria's shredded clothes would later be found. This doesn't really prove anything since the family was camping in that area, but the media just ran with it. Then a doctor came forward who had recently seen Azaria and said that she had been dressed in all black, which he thought was strange. Again, harmless, it's just clothes, so this proves nothing. And then tabloids started running these outlandish and very hurtful stories, like how Lindy and Michael killed their baby as a religious sacrifice, Christmas, or how baby Azaria was killed to atone for the sins of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which the Chamberlain family was a part of. So that, along with the police saying that Lindy wasn't behaving like your typical grieving mom, it painted her in such a bad light and made so many people around the world think she was guilty of killing her child. What's crazy is that based on all of that, Lindy and Michael were actually arrested in connection to their daughter's disappearance, and this case went on to have 4 inquests. The initial inquest was actually broadcast on live TV, which was a first for Australia, and this trial gained national attention. It was intense and a very wild ride. So the first inquest was held in February of 1981, and the magistrate ruled that the likely cause of Azaria's death was from a dingo attack. But he also said that after the attack, he believes that Azaria's body was then taken from the dingo's possession and disposed of by an unknown method, likely from Lindy and Michael. No one was really satisfied with this finding though, so this moved into a second inquest 7 months later. This time, ultraviolet photographs of baby Azaria's bloody jumpsuit were shown, and with that, a medical professional gave his insight into what possibly happened. Based on where the blood was on the jumpsuit, Azaria suffered an incised wound around her neck. In other words, the medical professional believed her throat was cut. Also found on the jumpsuit was a small handprint from an adult. The Chamberlain's car, which was a yellow Holden Torana, was also taken in for examination and shown in the trial. This is where the prosecution story starts to get controversial and pretty unreliable. So according to a forensic report, authorities claim to have found fetal hemoglobin in stains on the front seat of the family's car. Fetal hemoglobin is present in infants 6 months or younger. The test they used to find this so-called infant blood, though, is extremely unreliable, yet it was still used in court. Because here's the thing, adult blood also passed this specific test for fetal hemoglobin. Not only that, but other organic compounds can produce similar results on this particular test, like mucus from the nose and even a chocolate milkshake, which, get this, were both present in the Chamberlain's car at the time this test was given. Despite this major contamination and unreliable test, prosecution started building their case against Lindy, even though it was basically non-existent. So according to the prosecution, they alleged that Lindy took Azaria back to the family car instead of the tent that night like she told her husband. Once in the car, they say that she cut Azaria's throat, likely with a pair of scissors in the front seat, which is where they found what they thought was Azaria's blood. Then she hid Azaria's body in a large camera case before going back to the campfire with her husband and other campers. This is when they say Lindy went back to the tent and faked not finding Azaria there, crying out that a dingo took her baby. And while the other campers were out searching for her, they say that she hid her baby's body somewhere where it has never been found. Really, the only piece of evidence supporting this claim from the prosecution, though, was Azaria's bloody jumpsuit that was found a week after her disappearance. The only thing that somewhat related to their theory, though, was the bloodstain around the neck, which could have gotten there a ton of different ways. Lindy was also heavily questioned about the outfit that Azaria was wearing the night she disappeared. Lindy claimed that she was wearing a cardigan over her jumpsuit, but this cardigan was never found, which authorities said made her suspicious and possibly lying. Lindy mentioned that Azaria was wearing a little baby tank top underneath her jumpsuit, and this item was found, but according to authorities, it was found in a suspicious manner. So the baby tank top was found inside out, inside the jumpsuit, but Lindy was adamant that she didn't put this on Azaria inside out. In fact, she was really particular about dressing her kids, especially in these little tank tops, and she would never put them on inside out. But of course, since they already thought she was suspicious, authorities thought she was lying about this too. They thought that there was no way a dingo could inside out a little tank top like that. In their eyes, it must have been done by a human. So the prosecution tried to reconstruct what they thought was the crime, but it didn't really add up. This is when multiple eyewitnesses came forward to testify on behalf of Lindy. All of the campers that were with them that night said that there were multiple dingoes in the area the night Azaria disappeared, and that they were all pretty vicious. Many of them claimed to have their own run-ins with dingoes that had come up to them to try and attack. All of the campers believed Lindy and felt like she was telling the truth and that she did not kill her own baby. Another witness, who just so happened to be a nurse, said that she actually heard a baby cry after the time period that prosecution claimed Lindy had killed Azaria. So none of their timelines added up whatsoever, and it seemed more and more like Lindy and Michael were telling the truth. An engineer who conducted dingo research for over a decade even testified, and he said that dingoes have incredibly sharp teeth that can shear through material as tough as a seatbelt, and he had personally witnessed many dingoes who had carefully removed bundles of meat from its wrapping paper in many studies, all while leaving the paper intact. incident. So it was in fact possible that a dingo took off Azaria's jumpsuit and tank top, leaving it inside out. But despite all of this evidence and literal dingo footprints inside the tent, Lindy was convicted of Azaria's murder in 1982, and she was sentenced to life imprisonment. Michael was convicted as an accessory after the fact, and he was originally sentenced to 18 months in prison, but this was later reduced and he was given a suspended sentence. This was a major shock because this conviction came with no physical evidence tying Lindy to the crime, only circumstantial evidence. Lindy had no motive to kill her baby at all. This kind of caused an uproar in Australia and sparked a Free Lindy movement. She tried to appeal many times and all legal options were pretty much exhausted. But 4 years later, and by a crazy chance discovery, evidence was found that proved Lindy's innocence. So in 1986, a British tourist named David Brett was out on an evening climb in Ayers Rock when he slipped and fell to his death. Just on the size of the rock alone and its rugged terrain, it took authorities 8 days to locate David's remains. His remains were discovered laying below the bluff where he lost his footing, and this just so happened to be an area full of dingo lairs. As police scoured the area looking for the rest of his bones, which had been carried off by dingoes, they saw something shocking. There, in a dingo's lair, they found Azaria's missing cardigan, the one that Lindy told police that she was wearing when she disappeared, yet they never believed her. So it turned out, this entire time, Lindy wasn't lying at all. At this point, though, she had spent 4 years of her life wrongfully imprisoned. After this discovery, though, Lindy was granted immediate release and the case was reopened. By 1988, all charges against her and Michael were completely overturned. This entire time, they were innocent, yet no one believed them. In 2012, a coroner confirmed that Azaria really had been taken by a dingo and killed, 32 years after her death. Her death certificate was officially amended to mirror this finding. It's just sad that it took that long, and what a crazy discovery too. Years later, in finding her missing cardigan in a random dingo's lair, Lindy got incredibly lucky with that discovery. It's just sad that she had to spend 4 years in prison first. Lindy was granted $1.3 million after she was released for false imprisonment. But what sucks is that this only covered less than a third of their legal expenses. I don't think that's very fair at all. The Chamberlain trial was super intense, unprofessional, and unreliable, and it made people super critical about how investigations were going to be handled in the future. And since it was highly publicized, this case is now used as an example of trial by media, how media coverage and bias can adversely affect a trial. I mean, there was no physical evidence linking Lindy to the crime, yet the media scrutinized her so badly. They criticized the way she grieved, her religion, the meaning of Azaria's name. They literally called Lindy a witch. This all sadly played a huge part in her conviction. Michael died in 2017 after a battle with leukemia. He was 72 years old. This case and Lindy's saying, "The dingo ate my baby," or "The dingo took my baby," would later be adapted into many different comedic TV shows, like Seinfeld, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and The Simpsons, which is really sad. This story was also made into an opera called Lindy, which is crazy. I first heard the phrase "the dingo ate my baby" from Seinfeld when I was a kid, and I thought it was just a funny saying. Weird, but funny. I had no idea the true horrific meaning behind that saying until I learned about this case and where it really came from.